Hello and welcome to Let's Talk with Parul. So this is an episode where we're going to be talking about digital safety, and we've already introduced a little bit about that in the descriptions, in our promos, simply because our kids have far overtaken us as far as technology is concerned. We may have created it for them, but now we're struggling to keep up. And honestly, I think we will be struggling with it for the rest of our parenting life. Digital technology, our beloved devices with all their advantages and disadvantages are here to stay. Let's just get used to that fact. Technology connects us to each other in ways we couldn't imagine even a decade ago, and the lockdown has shown us that quite clearly. A case in point is this very discussion that we are having online with people from different parts of the country. We've created new interests for ourselves, cultivated creativity, gained knowledge, shared it, shopped, paid bills, been well entertained. We're all benefiting from it. And that's why it's so important that we accept its presence in our lives. So, our discussion today is not to debate the pros and cons of the digital life or the digital world, but rather to face the very uncomfortable truth that our children are not entirely safe in it and to figure out what we can do about it. My panel today will bring in voices from different perspectives. And let me get everybody there now on screen. There we are. And let me introduce them. Tara Bedi is the Public Policy and Community Outreach Manager at Instagram. Tara has immense experience in the film and multimedia space, and at Instagram, her key focus is on how visual storytelling can help young users express themselves using social media in an empowering and safe way. Nikhil Taneja is the co-founder and CEO of Yuvaa. That's a platform that creates purpose-driven entertainment to empower young Indians. He's a writer, producer, storyteller, teacher, entrepreneur, youth mental health advocate, and he's worked extensively to create safe spaces for young people to express themselves in person and online, which is why this conversation is going to be so critical today. Upasana Kinra is a psychologist. She's an educator. Currently, she's a behavioral and career counselor at a leading school in Delhi. But her vast experience includes counseling young students, particularly in the area of self-esteem, stress management, depression, cyber safety, cognitive communication skills, relationship issues, and parenting styles as well for the parents. So that's a great panel here, and thank you all for joining me. I'm sure we're going to have a very, very rich discussion with different perspectives. And let's just get going straight away. I think I'd like to start with a reality check of what's actually going on outside of the unseen dangers. A lot of times parents are oblivious to things that could go wrong online because sometimes they just don't know enough. Being aware of the problem is obviously the first step towards the solution. So I'd like to ask you all, in your specific areas of work, what are the key online dangers that you have come across, and what is the visible impact on young people? Nikhil, let's start with you because I think you'll be able to give us a perspective from the adolescent and the young adult's point of view. So let's start with your perspectives.
Thank you for having me here, Parul. Really excited to be part of this great panel. I've loved working with Tara, so anytime I'm getting to be on a panel with her makes me always. I think the conversation always becomes more meaningful. So it's very interesting. Over the last 2 years, Parul, I have traveled with Yuvaa to over 100 colleges across the country. To met over 10,000 young people in person to over 30-35 cities of India. This year we did that along with Instagram as part of something called Unlabel India, the Yuvaa Roadshow of Kindness. And really our attempt was to understand the stories of young people, what they were going through. When we create safe spaces for them offline, what is it that they say about what they're going through that they're not comfortable saying online in many ways, so that we can come back and create safe spaces online as well, so that they can express better online as well. And it is over the last 2 years it's been consistent in what they say. It's young people in our country are feeling more lonely than ever before. Now I would imagine that to be like how does that makes very little sense, because apparently we are more connected than ever before. Why is it that young people feel lonely? It's because in their offline lives, and this is something that has come up so often that it's not even shocking to me anymore. It's young people pretty much saying that my parents don't understand me. My parents don't accept me for who I am. They don't understand that I have an identity outside of the identity they want to give me, outside of the identity that society wants to give me. They want me to take the streams, to be to be of the sexuality, to have the gender that society wants me to. Log kya kahenge is the biggest problem even today, and I'm not allowed to truly be who I want to be. And that's giving them stress. That's giving them anxiety. That their phone has become their best friend. They go to online platforms. In fact, they find platforms like Instagram a safe haven for them, because they find communities online where they can truly be who they are, because in their offline lives they feel lonely. They look down on their phones all the time because they're scared. When they look up, is anybody going to listen to me? Is anyone going to care about what I have to say? And this is a very deep rooted problem. It might seem that your child is completely fine, and they will not express it as much offline, but that doesn't mean that they're not going through something. So a lot of it really comes back to the fact that acceptance and love that they should have in their lives, they're not having it, or perhaps the parents think they have it, but it's not in the way that these young people want. So I think we need to be more cognizant of what they're going through, and be very, very, we need to really understand that loneliness today is probably just as big a pandemic as is the virus that we are going through.
That's truly a frightening thought, because, we were just discussing this before we started, that as parents, we're all, trying to do things that make communication easier with our children. And if there is still that amount of loneliness, and I totally get what you say, that when a child looks up from that phone, they suddenly find nobody who can understand them. And, they don't find that relatability any longer. Tara, let me move to you. And, Nikhil mentioned this point about how Instagram is becoming that place where they can find like-minded communities or people. Do you find that happening a lot? Is that what the platform is being used for by a lot of young people? And what are you seeing? What are the downsides that you are seeing, in your experiences?
So, off the bat, and thank you for the kind words, Nikhil and Parul. Thanks for having me here. This is always an opportunity for us. So, again, thank you for that. I think off the bat, this is our goal. Our goal is to make sure that we're creating a space that is welcoming and open and inclusive to all kinds of voices, young voices, old voices, voices from different communities. So I think for us, this is our goal. So if people come here and feel safe to express themselves and voice their opinions, or it could also be to run their businesses, whatever it might be, that's for us our goal. And I think somewhere we are really grateful that people find that safe haven over here. And we do see that, right? Instagram is one of those places where you do find more and more communities of support also existing, and it happens, across the world. And I'm happy to give you some examples of how we've been able to see that. So one of our partners, in fact, that we worked on on a safety guide for the queer community in India, is an account called the Queer Muslim Project, and they talk about queerness and being Muslim. Right, these are two sort of very uh, identities that fight with each other, but nonetheless they are able to find a community and create an environment that is welcoming for them. Similar to that, we also run something called the Counter Speech Fellowship with another partner called Young Leaders for Active Citizenship, where the goal really is to engage young people and to encourage them to be that peer-to-peer support system for each other. Because often, and you guys are the experts, maybe kids aren't listening to their parents and their teachers. Maybe they're more amenable to listening to people who look like them and sound like them and talk like them. So our goal even there is to kind of encourage that community support and make it a sort of almost like a shared responsibility to take care of each other. I mean, I can keep going on about this. It's one of the joys of being able to do what I do. In terms of some of the downsides, I think, see, it's a big bad open world, and we can assume that some of the challenges that we face in our real lives, they manifest online as well. In fact, sometimes they're exacerbated because it's you're not face to face with the person, but the impact can be felt, right? The impact of that abuse is felt sometimes even more because you aren't able to confront the person that is upsetting you. So I think on that front, I mean, we are doing a lot of things to address these issues. I think on the bullying and harassment front, there's a whole bunch of features that we've launched to make sure that people stay safe. And the most recent ones that I'll just quickly point to is something called restrict. And I mean, because you're from the parent community, I think you might appreciate this. But one of the things that we've been seeing is that when you block somebody, it's not enough because it becomes really awkward in real life. So think of that child in school that is being bullied by somebody and then blocks their bully on Instagram because that bullying is happening on Instagram as well. So we launched something called restrict, which is a more silent way of blocking somebody. So the person doesn't really know that they've been restricted, but they aren't able to communicate with you as openly as they would have been able to. So all the comments and all the comments that they leave for you are not actually visible to anybody, and you would have to manually approve them. They aren't able to see that you're online. Similar to that, we also recently launched a bulk comment management um, tool. So you can bulk delete comments and you can pin the positive comments up high so that when you see that post or when somebody sees that post, the first thing that they see is positivity. And that's really something that we try and encourage our community to do. So like 2 years ago, in fact, no, 3 years ago in 2017, we did a project called Kind Comments, where we took over one wall in Sasundok as part of the Street Art Foundation's Sasundok art project. And we just made a giant mural where this symbol, this heart symbol was the central emoji or the central feature. So somebody had to stand in a particular place and this heart would appear in front of them. And we really wanted to leverage that behavior of somebody standing in front of, a piece of street art and taking that selfie to remind them to leave a kind comment to somebody, because it matters, right? Kindness matters. And that's definitely one thing. I think bullying and harassment is something to protect yourself against. And again, comment moderation tools, which we have a lot of, is something that I encourage people to explore. I think generally staying private on Instagram and controlling your privacy is also something to be mindful of, especially with younger people. I think it's important to be circumspect about whom you let in. So keeping a private account and then actually approving each person and allowing each person into that world, I think is something to encourage and think about. Similarly, and this is something that applies to everyone, strong passwords, because some of the biggest complaints that we receive are hacked accounts or impersonations or something like that. So when you create a strong password and you protect your account with two-factor authentication, that makes it much harder for somebody to get in and actually, do something as bizarre as send other people dirty messages through your account. So these are the kind of things that we encounter these things on a day-to-day basis. The bad part of my job is that I get to see the worst of the worst. So there's a lot of things there. But I think these are a few tips that we really encourage people to think about: privacy, how to control your interactions, and just to secure your account. I think that's something that I'd love to also share with you. We worked on a parents guide, in fact,
Please
to
do. In fact,
Instagram.
we have linked some resources here in the description. There are some resources that parents will find useful, and we will add the link to your resource as well. And we will, in fact, just a few minutes later, we will ask you to recap this, because I can see there are a lot of people still joining in. And what I'd like to tell everybody is that in case you have questions that you feel that Nikhil or Tara or Upasana can answer, please do post them in the comments. I'm keeping track of that, and we'll try and get you as many answers as possible. The resource guides, the links to some resources are there in the description to this post, and we will add the Instagram resource as well. And those will undoubtedly be useful, and we will ask Tara to recap some of these points again. So before that, of course, Upasana, I want your perspective on what's happening with the school children. I mean, is that loneliness that Nikhil talked about, is that as prevalent with the younger lot of children as with the older lot? Or are we seeing different kinds of issues there with, children as young as 7, 8, 9 who are getting on the internet and, maybe surreptitiously, but they're all there, they're all active. So are there different issues that we are seeing with children of that age group? Pastor, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the panel, and a very warm welcome to all the parents. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, absolutely audible.
All right. So what I was talking was, I think I should start with the good news, and the good news is that throughout my career there have been few cases. I mean, there have been cases, but the number of cases are not that large that we need to be very, very scared. But again, having said that, there have been lots and lots of cases which I have come across, and probably the gravity is more as and when the children grow in age, because when they're little younger, they're still monitored. As and when they grow up, they start getting into their cocoons, like rightly said by Nikhil. They want their privacy. So what they're doing behind the doors of their bedrooms, parents are not really aware of, even if they want to, because the children don't want to share that space with the parents. So most of the times, the kind of challenges they might face when they are in adolescence will be a little more, and it becomes trickier. The younger kids, somehow they end up sharing it with the parents. Most of the time, they will share it with parents because, till the time they don't grow into teens, they still feel that parents can protect them. As and when they start growing up, the teens start feeling that, the parents will not understand us, and they don't share much of it. So if we talk about the kind of problems, I mean, they range from cyberbullying to even, children getting into pornography. I mean, as young as, say, 10 to 11-year-old. And I'm talking from my own experience, and even experience from different schools, because we all are connected, and we do share on different platforms as to, the best practices and how to handle certain cases. So, I mean, there have been cases where, the counselors have shared that, the kids who have kind of been addicted to porn as young as 11-year-old, and even the counselors are like trying to figure out how to help them. So there are a lot of issues that are there, and yes, the reasons is a slight disconnect probably between the parent and the child. And again, if it doesn't mean that if the parent is connected very well with the child, and the child may not face it, the child will face, because the parent doesn't have control on the outside world. He doesn't control the friends and the peer group of the child. And as we know about this FOMO, fear of missing out, so we can't expect our children not to go on these platforms, because when there's a murder, we don't blame the weapon, it's the murderer we blame. So why should we blame a platform like Instagram for that? Right, Tara? So I mean, even for that matter, I think it a lot depends on how the boundaries and rules are set at home by the parent, and the right kind of information. And when we talk about right information, at times we assume that our children know. But if we get a little deeper inside and talk and try and figure out, they might not even know about a lot of things. So it's better to try and figure out as to how much they know and how much they should know. And again, it has to be age specific. I mean, there's a very funny, not an incident, it's a joke that goes around, especially when we talk about, how much sex education should be given to the children. So there was this child who comes to his father and says, Dad, our teacher taught about birds and bees today in school. So this dad gets scared, and, he starts talking about everything else that he thought he is talking about, the birds and bees. And after he's finished giving him the gory details, this boy says, what are you talking about? I was talking about, the sparrows and the parrots and the bees. So, you need to be perceptive enough to know what is the age group of your child and how much information he can actually take, and how you are going to give that information.
That story is just so reflective of, this generation of parents. We're at the edge. The first cue that we get, we just spill out everything that we say. No, but those points are so valid that at the end of the day, there is some amount of disconnect which starts creeping in as early as that. We spoke to the mums on the group, on the community, on the Let's Talk with Parul Facebook group as well. And I'd just like to share some of the concerns that that they came up with, the chief concerns that mums have. So just going to quickly share the screen. Yeah. So I think broadly they were able to, bring out a lot of these interests, and content, contact, and conduct are the three broad areas in which there are concerns. Content means all the inappropriate content that children are consuming, including pornography and hate sites and violence, etc. Contact, of course, is all the stranger danger that we've been talking about from day one, and I think that is primarily what us as parents and most cyber safety experts have concentrated on, rather than conduct. And conduct refers to everything else, the cyberbullying that we've been talking about, sexting, trolling, or any other kind of behavior which puts others at some kind of, in discomfort or at risk also, including things like hacking and privacy, risking privacy. These are some specific things that Mom spoke about. Loss of human connect. Now, I think across the board, this has turned out to be the bigger danger or the bigger upsetting factor rather than stranger danger. It is now the loss of human connect. Moms are wondering, will they ever know that it's easier to reach out to people than post on social media? They're missing out on good, bad realities of experiences, relationships. Of course, there's information overload, appropriate, inappropriate, all kinds. Their physical issues, headaches, circadian rhythm going for a toss, eye strain and memory loss of focus, etc. There are privacy risks. There are children are consuming content that reflects questionable values and behavior. There is this huge disconnect with reality. Children are becoming zombie-like. And as they say, one mom said that they're actually counting their likes, views as much, and they're treating them as wealth, just as we would say, count our monopoly money and pretend that is what our wealth is all about. So here it is, the disconnect with reality is huge, and that is what is bothering moms the most. We had a very disturbing incident it was about a month ago, which followed the boys' locker room incident, where one young boy was accused by another youngster, and he just couldn't take that, and he committed suicide because the virtual world is so much bigger. And like you said, there is this huge disconnect that didn't allow him to even be able to confide with anybody, go and talk to his parents. Suddenly, it's become larger than life. So my question actually to all of you would be, like this whole FOMO, what can we do to help kids not lose touch with reality? Nikhil, once again, I'd like to start with you.
Can you repeat the last part of the question? I think, Upasana, if you don't mind, could you put your thing on mute? I think some of the echo is coming from there.
Okay, Nikhil, my question to you was essentially about children losing touch with reality, and that is emerging as the single biggest concern of parents over stranger danger and over all those other things that we've talked about so far. So how the real virtual world is becoming larger than life, and it is becoming something that children are not even being able to handle. This whole thing, FOMO, we just mentioned that. We're talking about kids feeling scared or missing out stuff which is happening online. My question to you was, how can we help kids stay in touch with reality? How do we distinguish the virtual and real world for them?
I think the first most important thing to realize is that this is not another world for them. This is their world. This is the reality. It's not, we cannot, one of the first things that we need to understand is that we cannot look at differentiating, the two worlds and look at it as like an online world and offline world. This is their entire world. This is what they're growing up with. In when I was growing up as a millennial, for example, so much of my understanding of the world has come from the TV, and TV channels at that time, what they would be showcasing, MTV India, Channel V, my parents would complain, "Ye hame bigad rahe hain." But this is what would give me a perspective about the world outside of what you would see in other TV shows. And in that very way, like, in fact, I would say, I would go so much as to say that they feel less comfortable in the so-called real world than they feel in the virtual world of today. Because as I said before, they feel far less alone in the virtual world because they find like-minded people. They find people who are like them And one the most essential thing, one I think over here is to understand is that our offline world is not as progressive as our online worlds in many ways. We still live in very patriarchal Indian society where we are not allowed to truly express ourselves. We are not allowed to truly be who we want to be. There is just so much judgment. There is this whole idea of log kya kahenge. There is always Sharma ji ka beta and Masi ki ladki that you are being compared to. All of these things add up for a lot of young people, who are finding out, in many ways also parents kind of grow, I mean, again, not being a parent myself, but what I have understood from a lot of young people is that they don't really tell them truly about all the good, bad of the world. Everybody kind of tries to pretend that there is this beautiful system and everything is fine. And if you have, if you're always going to be good things will happen to you. If you're always going to be, truthful and you'll always succeed in life. You'll do hard work. You will win at everything. That's not how it is, right? Like the world is both good and bad. There are good things that happen. There are bad things that happen. And if you don't prepare our children for the inevitability of some of the bad things happening, they're going to be exposed to them online, and then they will start reacting or start learning there before their parents kind of teach them. And that's what's happening on the internet. They're finding truth on the internet. They're finding people who understand them, who appreciate them, who accept them, and in many ways people who just listen to them. Whereas in the offline world we don't see that much. So I would say that let's not treat this as a phenomenon that is happening because of FOMO or anything, etc. Let's truly realize that this is the world that they are going up with. In fact, our worlds are changing. We have to adapt, to technology far more than we ever had to, and this is only going to be the norm. So how can we coexist, in these two worlds? How can we also, in many ways, try and understand what are the best ways? Again, like Tara, for example, recommended, there are definitely ways of making the online experience smoother. There are definitely ways of making the offline world for them seem far more accepting and loving as much as the online world sometimes seem to them. So let's just try to find the coexistence. I think that's where the actual, I suppose, thin line kind of will lie.
No, I accept your point totally, Nikhil. I totally accept what you're saying, that, it's about time that us as parents, we stop delineating these two worlds and realize that, yes, this is their world. But my question is actually more to do with, the kind of validation that they're always expecting online. That and if it doesn't come, what happens? And if that validation is negative, because that's become their entire world, it's becoming a little difficult to balance, right? I mean, I don't know, it's all just very mixed up.
The validation comes because, again, they're not getting it on offline. That's the reason that they're seeking is on it online. See, I'll give an example. If there is, let's just say, let's take an example of a queer kid, somebody who at a very early age realizes that they may not be straight, and they may have a sexuality that might be not the conventional, according to Indian society standards, a conventional sexuality. Not many parents are even, and I would say this even among urban circles, parents are not going to be that accepting, because many parents still don't understand what this means. And I don't mean to shame parents. I'm just saying that, they grew up in a world where this wasn't much of a concept, or they weren't growing up with the understanding that this happens. And now these young people at a very early age are recognizing their identities, realizing their identities, but they are very worried to talk to their parents. So where do they go to seek this validation? Obviously online. If on the other hand, parents are able to create safer environments in their homes where they can tell them that, again, young people are not looking for advice. They're not looking for like, I'll give you a trophy and I will give you money. They're just genuinely looking for support. They're looking for somebody who just accepts them for who they are. And if they start finding that offline, they will not have to go online to seek these things.
Okay. I do agree. I completely agree that, yes, there has to be a balance of the two worlds. And Upasana, I'm going to ask you to take that conversation further and, add to it from your perspectives, because obviously that's happening at a very early age as well. Only then does it go on to, like older children not being able to actually, balance the two worlds or get the kind of validation that they need at home. So what advice do you have to parents? How early can we start, and what do we start with? You'll have to unmute yourself, please. Yeah, few technicalities we have to take care of.
All right. Yeah, I was about to start with the same thing what you said, that the parents have to start early. They cannot expect that since my child is a teenager now and now I'm going to become a friend of my child. That doesn't happen because the damage has already been done. So you need to start very, very early. I mean, as early as when they're born. So the kind of bonding that you build up as per the age, and that has to begin very early, so that by the time they grow up and they might find any of these kind of troubles, so they feel okay to share those with you, because by then they would know that you are their go-to person, and this is what you have to be for them. See, I'm myself a mother, and I've got two children, and one is a young adult and the other one is a preteen. So I'm handling two different age groups at home. So my elder one says that I was your experimental subject. So whatever you learned on me, you are, applying those strategies, and you probably have brought up the younger one better. So I don't know whether that's true or not. But yes, definitely, we also as parents, we learn from our mistakes. And again, when we talk about connect, what I would again say that if we can't beat them, we have to join them. So, there was this case where there was this parent who had an issue, and this child had an issue, not a child, in fact she is a teenager, and there was a complete disconnect, and they had seen me because of certain decisions that she had to take for her career. And slowly and steadily we started talking and meeting, and I could understand that the mother was simply somebody who used to give directives at home. She never tried to connect. She just said, I am your friend, you tell me what's happening. I mean, this doesn't work. I mean, children are smart enough. They know what a friend is, and you can never be a friend, no matter how friendly you are. You can be a friendly parent, but not a friend. So slowly and steadily, I understood that, what the interests of that girl was. She was too much into the popular fad these days, and that is the K-pop. And, she was entirely into Korean pop. So I tried talking to the mother and said, why don't you start taking some interest in it? And it was difficult, but slowly and steadily, they started finding a common ground to talk on. So, things are little better, but yes, this is what we have to do. We have to try and join them in their interests, and probably then start guiding from there. Because when we talk about cyber safety or anything for that matter, all the basic principles of parenting will remain same. It's just that we ourselves need to be updated about the entire information if we really want our children to know what they are supposed to do. So that is something that's really important. So if you ask me, I will talk majorly about 4 points. I mean, if we can talk right now, or probably you want to come to it later. I mean, you tell me.
Let's quickly enumerate them, the 4 points. So go to them.
Yeah, I like to talk generally in the terms of pointers, so it's easy to
absolutely. We have just enough time for that.
So the very first thing that we need to remember is that integration of and when I'm talking about as a school and as a parent. So there will be the 4 points: integration of everything that we're talking about, cyber safety, integration of that in the curriculum. So when you're talking about curriculum, now curriculum is all digital. Everything is online. So, initially the way we used to teach manners, how to enter the class, how to leave the class, get up when the teacher comes. So now it will be learning about the digital manners. And that is something that has to be integrated in curriculum, apart from just the cyber safety rules. Similarly, the second point I want to talk about is storytelling. That is something extremely important. So, finding out time to talk about the incidents that have happened around us, or probably we know about them, having conversations about it, rather than telling that this was wrong. Why not try and understand the perspective of the child, so that you know what the child is thinking? The child may say, yeah, he did it right. I mean, if he was bullied, he should have committed suicide. I mean, it can be a child's perspective. So it's only if you talk to the child, you'll understand what he's thinking, instead of you telling him. Because the moment you tell something, the child closes down and he doesn't want to open up, knowing you will not agree to his point of view. So that is number 2. And that is, a lot of storytelling as educators and as parents. Third will be creating a toolbox for children. Like Tara said that Instagram has a lot of tools. There are other tools, the spyware, and even Google extension has something called Stay Focused. A lot of other tools which should be taught to our children on a regular basis. Not that I have taught you 2 years back and you're going to continue with that. Learn and then teach your children and monitor them. So that's the third. And the fourth and the last is to build a community, which you're already doing. You have to build a community where you connect people together, and you have to stay connected with other parents, with the teachers, with the school, and the parents of other children, and try to find out how things are happening, how they are handling things, and learn from each other. So probably these four are going to ensure some safety.
I really like that point about storytelling, Upasana. I think that's something a lot of us parents do overlook. Like whenever something happens, we use it as a learning, as a teaching opportunity. And like this should have been like that, and I don't think that person should have done. You're right. I mean, we need to get the other perspective also before we pronounce our opinions and judgments, because we do tend to do that. I think it's just human nature to get your point of view out across. Tara, I'm going to ask you to first just quick recap. Just like Upasana's given us 4 points, give us your 4 points, the Instagram tools that we are not using. And I mean, I know all parents would definitely want to know that. What is the safety harness that you have already created on the platform, and why aren't we using it? What are the basics we need to do? Starting with the age, the appropriate age a child should open their account.
So, fortunately or unfortunately, we only allow people who are 13 and over to be on the app. And if we become aware of an account that is held by an under 13-year-old, then we will be obligated to take it down unless it expressly states that it is being managed by a parent. So I think that's one thing to just take in off the bat. Second thing, in terms of how we think about safety on Instagram, there are, I think, multiple things that we would like folks to know. I think if talking to the parents community, the biggest piece of advice I will give is just download the app and navigate it yourself. Understand it, understand what these different words mean. What is stories, what is live, what are your DMs, what does blocking mean, etc., etc. And I mean, to help that cause, we have actually created a guide for parents. It's a little outdated, but we are working on developing a more updated one. But we have other resources that I'm sure Parul will share with you that can direct you to this information in a more consolidated and articulate form. But the first thing I think folks should think about is privacy. Instagram allows you to have a private profile. It also allows you to have a public one. And it really depends, right? Your public profile, if let's say you have an interest in K-pop or in illustration or in spoken word or in food or some kind of creative expression, then by all means people should have that, but maybe that's not the right place, especially for young people, to put out their personal lives and friends, family, that kind of stuff. And for that you can have a private account. In fact, a lot of teens do have that. It's called a Finsta. So this is a new word perhaps for the community, wherein they won't have their real name, but they'll have, I love Jyotis or something like that. But I think that's one thing to think about, that if you are using this as a place for creative expression and connecting with people who are like-minded, who have those shared interests, then this is thing to kind of maybe have two different accounts. One is just for friends, family, and those personal moments. The other thing to think about is, even if you want a public account, there are ways to be private, right? One is that you can share your stories to a group of close friends, so you don't have to share everything with everyone. You can also share directly into your direct messages, and that's a good place to also be private. Another thing that, and the second thing I'll kind of get to, is just managing your interactions. And this really means whom you let in and whom you allow into your space. And that could be through that private profile, but it could also be through your comments basically, because that's where a lot of the negativity also happens. So I think if you go into your settings, you are able to control and filter your comments to quite a granular degree. One, where there's an automatic filter which automatically weeds out language that we as a company feel is problematic or abusive. The second is a manual filter, which allows you to put keywords in. So let's say you have a particular issue that triggers responses in you, then you can customize that list of comment controls with those keywords. and comments with that language will never appear in your feed. The third is to swipe a filter with the most reported words on Instagram. So typically words are reported or comments are reported, but we understand that, language is constantly evolving and vernaculars and colloquial language is constantly evolving. So if certain terminology is very reported and it is offensive, then again, you can filter that out of your comments. You can also choose who can comment on your posts. So it can be everyone, it can be just people you follow and people who follow you back. It can be just the people who follow you, it can be just the people you follow. Then you can also block certain people from commenting on your feed. You can also turn comments off completely, because that's like, if you want to make a statement and if you want to express yourself but you don't really want to deal with other people's opinion, then you can turn comments off completely. I think that's something to keep in mind. And I think the last thing that I'll talk, two more things I'll talk about if I have a minute. One is, of course, just account security. I cannot tell you how much time I spend on hacked accounts. It would be a personal favor to me, but most importantly to the rest of you. I think it's really important to think about password strength and whom you share your password with. Ideally, you should not give your password to anyone. I mean, if it's different, if it's between a parent and a child, I think that's something that parents and their kids can determine on a one-on-one basis. But don't give your password to random strangers and to friends, etc. And pick a strong password that does not have your birthday, your mother's name, your potential crush's name, your pet's name. These are birthdays. Like, these are all things to stay away from, because they're the first things people will guess. And to turn on two-factor authentication, which basically sends an OTP to your phone. I think these are just important hygiene things to think about. If, for example, people get messages or emails that are, promising them a verified account or more followers or more engagement, then I really encourage people to go into their settings, into security, and then there's something called emails from Instagram, where you'll see any official communication that we have done with you. So that's another thing just to watch out for, because often we hear of people falling prey to scams like this. The last thing I'll talk about is we have time spent tools. I know there was a lot of conversation around FOMO. And, I think people feel sometimes that, and I'm sure as parents, you've heard this or seen kids kind of, or anyone, actually, it's an adult problem as much as it is a child problem. Um, is like mindlessly scrolling through the app and not really engaging with the content. I think for us, we are most successful and when people feel happy on our platform, when people feel like the time that they spent there is with intent, it's positive, it's inspiring. And if you're mindlessly not engaging with content and just scrolling, then it's really not going to help us, that's for sure. It's not going to really help you. So we introduced something called our time spent activity dashboard. It tells you how much time you're spending per day, per week. It allows you to set a notification for yourself and set a timer or a daily limit. So let's say for me, mine is 40 minutes. I think 40 minutes is plenty for me. So at the 40-minute mark, I'll get a little notification on Instagram that says, okay, time to switch off. Similarly, if you want to focus and you find that your notifications are just blowing up on your phone, and everyone has a family WhatsApp group that has that you just sometimes want to be like, chup, keep quiet. For that moment, we also have the ability to mute your notifications. And then the last thing that we introduced, which is a really small, sweet thing, it's a small little checkbox, a check mark in a circle that you'll see that says you're all caught up, which means that from the last time you opened the Instagram app to this time, you've seen everything new that everyone posted. So you haven't missed out on anything. So that FOMO feeling that, oh my God, somebody's posted something and I've missed it. This is just a small, lightweight reminder for people to know that, okay, you've seen it, it's fine. So that's kind of how we are thinking about FOMO. The last thing I say, and I know I've totally gone over my list, I'm not as good as Upasana is making numbered
No, but
points
it's
because my
important.
points go on.
We need this. Please go.
Yeah, to report indiscriminately. It is, there are two reasons I say this. One is because we don't have a handle on everything that happens on our platform, and we rely very strongly on our community to tell us what's wrong. And this is, I think, especially important when it comes to things like bullying, because I can refer to a friend in an aggressive, abusive way, but that can also be totally appropriate between us because that's the kind of language that we use. So I will not know when somebody calls me a certain word that whether they mean it or whether it's just being used in a fun, playful way. So reporting is very important for us to understand that this is something that is not working for you. That's one. Reporting is a very important thing for us to understand that this should not be allowed on the platform, and it's violating your community standards and it should be off. So we will review that. And the third thing, which I think is especially important for parents to know, is that when people, like, often people talk about their feelings on Instagram. They talk about difficult times that they're going through, sometimes about depression, anxiety, sometimes about self-injury, sometimes about suicide and having those thoughts. Whenever you see content like that, please report it. And the category of reporting is suicide and self-injury. All of the reports that you make on Instagram and Facebook, for that matter, are anonymous. So if I report one of Nikhil's posts, he will never know that Tara has reported his post. He will just know the next time he opens up the app, there will be a notification that says, hey, somebody is concerned about you, and if you need help, these are 3 places that you can go to. Those 3 places, the first place is actually your own phone book, which is a sort of reminder to connect with somebody in your life, so a friend or family. The second one is to our help center, which explains a lot of issues around mental health, eating disorders, etc., in simple language, so that people who are reading it aren't scared by the jargon, but it's easy to understand, and sometimes that helps. And the third one is actually to helpline partners that we have in the country. And some of our partners are iCall, which is a helpline manned by the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. We also work with the Samaritans in Mumbai and with Fortis Mental Health and Behavioral Sciences. All of these folks run helplines that offer language support. They all have different timings, but this is a really important intervention because it can help save lives. We've seen it save lives in the past. So it's really, really important. One other thing that I wanted to just call out is if people are using, hashtag I'm not okay or hashtag suicide or hashtag something that is problematic, they will see the same push notification on their phone. That pop-up will come saying, hey, you're searching for this content. Are you sure you want to see it? Are you doing okay? And these are 3 opportunities for help. So I just wanted to call out that these are, I think, largely speaking, the major things that we're doing to make sure people stay safe on our platform. But the goal really, Parul and Upasana, whenever you talk to other folks and if they have questions about Instagram, we want to make sure that we're giving people as much control over their online experience. And we really want them to have that. It's, everyone has a different experience. Every parent and child has a different relationship. Every person has a different relationship with the app. So it's really for you. We want to give you as much control so that you can consider your responses to your time on Instagram and how you feel about it and what you need to do to make decisions that are good for you.
Thanks, Sarah. That's really very informative. I think we're not aware and not using most of these features which are already there in the app. And I'm particularly impressed by this feature, where you have a backup, where there is a bit of a shout out for someone who's tagging these kind of these red flags essentially. So I think that would be a very useful tool. And there is somebody looking at it. I mean, that's another reassurance that parents can have, that there is someone who's looking at them. I particularly also for myself, I'm going to be looking at the time spent feature and activate it and make sure that it's there to tell me, okay, move on now. So this point, Nikhil, I'm going to bring this up for you to answer. Mindful viewing. Tara brought that up about, it just tends to happen. You look at one thing, you get distracted, you go to another hashtag, you look at one video, a kitten comes, a puppy comes, and you're lost. You're gone. It's a crazy whirlpool. It's, the deep dark hole, and you're gone. A lot of it also has to do with the kind of content that has been created. And I know a lot of young people are creating content. So how is it that one can actually guide them into expressing themselves mindfully, creating content that is mindful, that is of use to everybody? I know everything does not have to be, again, a learning opportunity. It can very well be entertainment, it can be expression, but it has to be mindful. How do we get that message across to young people?
Great question, Parul. Although I would say that, I mean, I'm always reluctant to look at parents and in the conversation between parents and children to be one of advice or one of, again, telling them. I would, in fact, urge parents to listen to young people a lot more. I think the key from everything that I have heard from young people is that they're not being heard enough. So, and, one of the things that I've also realized is that, what we may see as a certain kind of content that they're creating might actually be a way for them to express themselves in the most authentic manner. So, for, I mean, it's not fair for older people to kind of judge younger people for the kind of content that they're creating, saying that ये तुम ना शायद अलग करो या फिर जो ना इस तरीके से ना तुम better कर सकते हो, because we don't actually honestly understand the language, the lingo, I mean, and this is an actual unfortunate issue, right? I think the generation gap that has always existed has now become a communication gap, because parents and children are talking into different languages. What might seem mindful to you might actually seem very different to somebody who's younger. What might seem mindful for them may not actually be something that even exists in your field of vision overall as a parent. And it's okay, I mean, which is why I say I think I encourage parents to kind of do a far more listening. I think they anyway do a lot of talking, and I'm talking from my parents, the point of view of what I felt as a kid. But again, from a lot of these young people, I think most people don't need more advice, and because and I'll add this point, and I'm not just saying this from like a very broad piece of understanding. This is genuinely coming from the fact that this generation of young people, which is the Gen Z, has an access to information and awareness of the world far earlier than any generation has had before. So the kind of things that I would have understood in my 25 at the age of 25, 26, today a 16 or 15-year-old kid probably knows a lot more than that. And I would say like my IQ level at this age is exactly that of a 23, 24-year-old. Maybe my lived experience is more. Maybe my the way that I understand complexity because of my maturity is a little bit different. But having said that, I don't think my intelligence is any different than that of a young person anymore, because they have had that much longer with the internet. They've had that much longer to understand the world around them, and they're very aware of the world. The notifications constantly tell them about how terrible things are or how many things need to be fixed. Everybody, and there are like hundreds and hundreds of places giving them the right advice. There are YouTube channels, listicles, BuzzFeed, everything is telling them how to be, how not to be. What they actually need in their offline lives is just somebody to listen to them, versus again tell them and reiterate things. And if we can create that kind of a relationship with young people, I think that would what you were talking about, being friendly versus being friends, I think we can bridge that gap a lot more. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the understanding I have.
Totally makes sense. It comes back to that Venn diagram of, that generation and the parents and that intersection, which, oh God, it's tough to be a parent. That's all I can say. I remember my mother telling me that she said, I'm glad you guys are all grown up and we were parents when we were, because she sympathizes with us. And she says, yes, it's tough because this generation is facing so much more. And I don't deny that at all. I know that, teens today are facing many, many more difficult, complex issues than we ever did. So yeah, I think this is a Venn diagram needs to come closer.
I'll just actually add one more thing, which you will look at as a good thing for sure. Because one of the things that I've realized is that this generation has a lot more empathy also for their parents than I think any other generation has had before. Because
Okay.
yeah, I've seen that. I've seen like I mean I've heard so many young people saying that we understand that our parents don't understand. They understand that there is a lack of understanding because our parents have not had the awareness of access as we do. They understand that I might understand what feminism or gender equality or body shaming is, but my parents don't, because that's not the setup that they have grown up with. That's not the life that they have led, and they're very okay also to have these conversations as long as the parents are willing to listen. So I would say that the onus, unfortunately, at this point is on the young people to be empathetic to their parents. But if we can change that a little bit and just ask young parents also to be empathetic, not just kind to their children, but empathetic and listen to them more, I think that could really help bridge this divide.
Nikhil, one thing that has really changed in my head after talking to you is me still thinking of them as two different worlds. I think that is something we need to change. We started off by saying the digital life is here to stay. But still, I think for all of us, it was like us and them, and all of that is still happening. And that is something I know my mindset has to change. And I'm sure a lot of parents watching will also agree with me there. Closing words from you, Upasana, since we have enough time to get a little statement from you, especially since now, as we are saying, this is it. This is what life is going to be like. Schools are going to be online for a long time to come. We are quite sure that, physical attendance is not going to be possible. So how do we, and like, forget about screen time quotas and curfew times and all of that. Forget, I think that's really a point of history now. What do we do as parents? How do we go ahead? And especially now, from your point of view, with the younger kids, how do we do?
I think the ground rule will stay, and that is your expectations should be very, very clear, loud and clear to the children, that if you are with the gadgets, then what are the expectations as a parent that you have, how much time for everything. And then you as a parent, you need to monitor. You just cannot expect you yourself sitting with your gadgets and busy with your own life and expecting your child to be studying in another room. So, that kind of understanding, and like Nikhil said, that empathy has to be there. Like, if you are too interested in the gadgets, why will the kids not be? So that is something that you need to understand and, be aware of it. And yes, listening to your children, it's really important. Sometimes we say that we understand our children, but we need to question ourselves. Do we really understand them? Or are we just saying for the heck of it? Because kids will know when we really understand them. I mean, I might be, here talking like an expert, but when I'm talking to my daughter, the preteen I just talked about, half of the time she doesn't want to answer me. She says, "Oh, you are a boomer." I mean, she tells me you'll not understand because you're a boomer. Yeah, I mean, I have to explain it, categorically who boomers are. Probably my mother's generation was a boomer generation, not mine. But she said anybody and everybody who doesn't understand our language is a boomer. So, no matter how hard we try, Nikhil, it is actually very difficult to, get down to their level. But yes, that is the best that we could do. Try and understand what's happening in their lives, and not be too judgmental about what they're doing, because yes, digital life is their life, and there is no other thing right now. And not to expect too much from schools, because schools are doing their jobs, but right now, the kids are at home with us, and the teachers really cannot control them through the screens. At times, teachers say that we wish we had some sort of a power to enter the screen and set them right sometimes. But then again, this comes from the parents as well. So we need to have those kind of conversations, open communication with our children. So these things are going to make sure that we keep our children not just safe, but at least aware that if something is wrong, that who is the right person to report to. So they should not wait for the last nail to be put in the coffin before they open up their mouths and share with their parents. So, the very first nail, they should be aware, should be reported to the parent. Even if the child is, say, 8-year-old or 18-year-old, they should have that confidence to talk to their parents. That's really important.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Thank you so much, all of you. Tara, Nikhil, Upasana. It's been a fabulous conversation, an eye-opener in many ways. And I know that everybody watching would also be feeling the same. There are certain mental blocks that we just need to get over. We need sometimes reminders. We probably knew all this already. We just need a refresher course. We need reminders. And like what Tara has done for us, we need a toolkit. We need, the arms and ammunition to go about removing these mind blocks. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. And to all our viewers, thank you for
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Parul. Thank you.